how do you define entrepreneurial excellence? Like, what does that even mean?
Doing the impossible and creating opportunity for people. I think that's really what it is. After I sold my first company, I had one of my investors say something really profound to me that really got me thinking, which is, Josh, do you realize you willed this company into existence? And I spent a lot of time thinking about what it means to will something into existence, right? You could talk about creating something. You could talk about all the different facades that people talk about entrepreneurship. But at the end of the day, if you will something into existence, you're doing the impossible and you're creating opportunity for people along the way. And for me, I'm an immigrant to the US, grew up in Canada, heard a lot about the American dream and all that. And for me, this is what I think the modern American dream is. It's entrepreneurial excellence and creating opportunity for other people, and seeing a vision of what's impossible that many others don't see.
First to ask, I think a lot of people, and this is sort of in my mind right now, because we're recording this shortly after Charlie Kirk's shooting, and you're based in Utah and teach at university in Utah. I know there are a lot of people who would say, I'm going to put this in quotes for those who are listening, but quote unquote tech bros like you and me aren't actually creating opportunities for other people. In fact, we're taking them away and creating a worse world. What would you say to that? Obviously, you just said, hey, we're creating opportunity, but a lot of people feel it's the opposite. Tech is constantly firing people from their jobs and creating new technology that is removing jobs that used to exist.
Yeah, I'm going to respectfully disagree on that one. And I have a lot of different elements to that. And I think, being faculty at the University of Utah has really taught me a lot, about what creating opportunity for people really means in general. So the first thing I would say is that the economy today is very different than the economy was years ago, right? If someone today is trying to expect their job to be the same 10 years from now, fundamentally, I'm sorry to say it to you, it's just not going to be, right? So it's easy to say that tech is taking jobs from people. What I actually think is there's a lot of opportunities being created by tech. And what we should be encouraging people to do is use the technology of our generation to figure out where their job function is going to fit into the future, right? And I can tell you, I myself employ multiple people. I know a lot of my friends that are tech bros employ multiple people. And when you think of what a lot of the US economy is really based on, it is technology. It is revamping the way that our economy functions. So for someone to say that tech is taking away jobs, obviously there's a repurposing of jobs. And, frankly, with AI, we're sitting on one of the biggest technological innovations, definitely of my lifetime, but, my peers and whatnot at the U who are, let's just say, are a little more seasoned than I think that's the word that we should phrase it. The reality is we all recognize that the economy has changed drastically. So I think, what we need to help students see is that there's an opportunity for them in technology. Every industry is going to be innovated with technology. So the question you ask yourself is, where do you fit into the future? And that's really what I try to focus on with folks.
That idea, like, where do you fit in the future? And maybe to give an example too, just because this keeps coming to my mind when we're talking about like opportunity. I don't think anyone wants to go back to a world where taxi cabs were the main way to get a car to drive you around. For anyone who remembers those days, which I very much do, living in San Francisco, taxi cabs only pick you up in a few specific parts of San Francisco. And otherwise, you literally had to walk home if you were out late at night, let's say, or you would never get one. I remember calling a cab and they're like, oh yeah, it's going to take 2 or 3 hours for someone to maybe come get you. And it just never would happen. And why would you want to go back to that? And then suddenly Uber came out. And now suddenly everyone can be a driver and pick up a few extra hours of work. Now, other people now are getting mad about that and saying, well, now you have Waymo that's coming in, it's a self-driving car, and all these Uber drivers will lose their job. And it's like, to your point, people need to continuously find ways to grow, rebrand themselves, pick up new roles. And technology will take some roles away, but create many, probably millions of new ones.
Definitely. And I could give another really good example of that. So early on in my career, and I'm sure we'll unpack this later, I grew within Bloomberg's leadership development program. And at the time, I was doing my CFA designation. For those that don't know, that's the Chartered Financial Analyst designation. Very, very challenging designation to get, put a lot of nights and weekends of work into it. Many of my peers would go to me and they would say, hey, Josh, you're working in technology. Why would you want to do your CFA? It's so much work for you not to want to be a portfolio manager. And what I told them, at the time was, I think this whole industry is going to be automated with technology in the next 5 to 10 years. And I want to be able to speak the language in the way that, the people that are going to use this technology are going to do. At the time, I was working in portfolio and risk analytics at Bloomberg. I saw how the industry was going to change. I kind of watched the whole industry go from this kind of paper and pen world into, digitized records and portfolio management. What was so crazy is people were like, you're so crazy. There's no way that's going to be the case. And, 5 years later, the CFA curriculum itself had a section on financial technology and how, as CFA charter holders, we can understand this technology and understand how it impacts the industry. So one could say oh, do you need as many administrative people in your back office? Do you need all of the... Yeah, the world has changed. But the reality is there's people that get ahead of that change and try to upskill and try to learn how they can adapt and grow. I've been an example of that, and I've done well for myself. And what I encourage everybody to do is think 5 years, 10 years ahead. Always think 3 steps ahead. If you're thinking 1 step ahead, that's great. But generally, it's the 3 steps ahead. And so your assumptions can be validated or not, right? But I think that fundamentally, to expect the world to continue the way it is now, the Uber example you gave is a great one. I was living in San Francisco, working at Bloomberg and BlackRock while Uber came into existence, right? And it was one of those things. I remember when Lyft came on the scene. I remember all of the different moments. I remember when the little pink mustache Lyfts would pick you up, and it's oh, what's the difference between Uber and Lyft? Oh yeah, Uber's so commercial and Lyft is a cool guy that you're talking to. It's is that what Lyft is today? No. Have you talked to a Lyft driver and asked them no, right? But the reality is as technologists, what we're trying to do is figure out how do we net make someone's life better, right? And the reality is the world is changing at an exponential pace. A lot of people are really struggling with that. But I think as entrepreneurs, it's our job to think about what the future looks like and how we adapt that technology, for this generation.